RCT Show. We're here for episode 2. I am David with Rock Chalk Talk, joined today by Andrew, also known as Fizzle on Rock Chalk Talk. We also have Andy and Fetch along with us, both also contributors as well to the site. So we've got a 4-person crew here tonight just to revel in Big 12 title number 12 a little bit, and then look forward to what lies ahead for Kansas. I don't think we need to do too much review as far as what happened in the Texas Tech game. I mean, it was pretty much, I think, what we all expected. They were clearly the better team. They were ahead for the vast majority of the game. The Texas Tech, I think, maybe brought it back to 8 when Self started going to the bench a little more in the second half, but the game was never really in doubt. So I don't think we need to talk too much about what happened in the game, but obviously the big news is that it clinched the 12th consecutive title for Kansas basketball. And there are a lot of different reactions out there. Everyone seems impressed by it, but there are a lot of different ways to kind of undercut it by either saying that the conference hasn't been that good, or I know Doug Gottlieb pointed out that the first handful of years that they were playing an unbalanced schedule. Whatever. I don't think we need to debate the merits of the streak at this point, but I'd rather focus on the positive. So along those lines, I'd just like to kind of go through each person and see if you have a particular favorite moment or favorite team from over the past 12 years from throughout the streak. Fetch, I'll start with you. Is there anything that stood out to you as a lasting memory over the last 12 years?
I would say probably the 2012 team, just because, I was in school then, and so, when they beat Ohio State in the Final Four, I did the whole go to Mass Street type deal. And also, that was Tyshawn's senior year, and I remember, just more like on a personal note, there was the whole big, is Tyshawn Taylor actually any good thing? And I was one of the people, I think you were too, but I was one of the people who was really all about him and stuff, and so I really reveled in being right for once on that. So that was probably the big one. Obviously, 2008 when they won the title, but that one was really big. And then I think 2013 when they had the 3-game losing streak, including losing at home and losing at TCU when they were horrific. And then they kind of rebounded by not losing again, which included a double overtime win at Oklahoma State. So I think that kind of, those 2 years back to back really stood out to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think the 2012 team is a really popular one just because of the degree to which I think they probably overachieved. So I think a lot of people really remember that one. Andrew, I'll go to you next. Is there anything that's stood out to you over the last 12 years?
Yeah, the 2010 team, I would say. You get Cole on that team, and Sharon, Kadamorai, Tyshawn, I think, Reed and Morningstar, and all those guys. They were just unstoppable until the tournament, obviously. But yeah, for me, at the 2010 team, it was my favorite, I think.
All right, and Andy, any teams or moments that stood out to you?
Well, I don't want to take the easy route and say this team, but I would have to say less a team and more a player. I think Christian Moody, I think, was just the greatest walk-on of all time. I think was probably what sticks out the most to me and was probably my favorite time, favorite player of that whole era, just because, to go from walk-on to starter for a team that is continually winning the title is just a good story, and it was probably one of my favorite points of the program under Self. So.
Yeah, I know Moody was I think he kind of got that reputation. I heard a lot of announcers refer to him as the best walk-on in the country. He never really contributed a ton statistically to the team. As I recall, he's a pretty good offensive rebounder. But yeah, it was definitely a good story to be able to go from walk on at a place like Kansas, and end up significantly contributing to a team that was able to win a Big 12 title. I'm glad nobody stole mine. Mine was the 2009 team, the year after they won the national championship. Nobody really knew what to expect out of that team, just because they lost basically almost all the main contributors from the national championship team. Cole Aldrich, really his claim to fame was shutting down Tyler Hansbrough in the Final Four the year before, but nobody really knew what he could contribute as an everyday player, as a starter. I mean, Sean Collins had always been kind of a spark plug kind of guy off the bench. He'd never been relied on to really take over a team. The Morai were just freshmen at that point. Tyshawn Taylor was a freshman. We hadn't really seen much of Tyrell Reed or Brady Morningstar, and for them to go on the run that they did, looks like, I'm counting them right now, they won 13 out of 14 games at one point in the Big 12 schedule, and they had a lead against Michigan State and had a shot at going on to the Elite Eight that year. So I think just they exceeded everybody's expectations, I think, by just so much. That's a team I'll always remember. And I could be wrong, but I believe that's the year that Sharon Collins and that guard from Oklahoma got into that three-point war in that game down in Norman, and that's something I'll always remember as one of Sharon's finer games. So that's probably my favorite team if I had to pick one, other than obviously the national championship team. So now that the Big 12 title's wrapped up, tomorrow night or tonight, by the time this goes up on the site, Kansas will have to take on Texas, a Texas team that just ended up burying Oklahoma at the very end. It was a pretty close game for most of the way, but Oklahoma kind of had them at a single-digit disadvantage for most of it, and then I think Texas went on a 22-0 run toward the end, and really ended up with it looking more like a blowout than it really was. But regardless, Texas has been playing really well, and Kansas, just clinched the title. Psychologically, you might expect some degree of a letdown coming off of a set of circumstances like that. So I don't know. I haven't talked to any of you guys about the game against Texas, but Andy, I'll start with you. What do you kind of expect out of the team going down to Austin and having to rebound from already having cut down the nets to playing a game that tough? Andy, are you still with us? I think we may have lost Andy for the moment. So Andrew, I'll go to you. Do you have any thoughts on how the team might respond against Texas coming off of the championship ceremony on Saturday?
Yeah, we're going to lose it, I think. They're playing pretty good recently, and so are we. But coming off a big championship win on a Saturday, and then going down to Austin, and it's a pretty short turnaround. I think Texas had 2 straight home games, so they're going to have the advantage on the rest. And I mean, you're still playing on the road in the Big 12, so it's going to be tough. I think they'll get beat. Can be not a blowout, but I think they'll still lose.
All right, yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's going to be. It's always tough to play on in the Big 12, like you said, and then coming off of the big win and what Texas has been able to do recently, it definitely makes it tougher. Fetch, do you have any? I know you'll have a recap going, or not a recap, but a preview going up. But do you have any preliminary thoughts on Kansas going down to Austin?
That reminds me of. Yeah, I think that they're probably gonna lose. I mean, they're kids. I'm sure they don't really give a crap about this game. It is, Texas, I think, is like the winner of the overrated team in the league right now. They are actually just a bit worse than Baylor and Iowa State in terms of like in conference efficiency. Points per possession minus points allowed per possession. They're actually sixth. So it's not like they're great, but if some of their size is in there, if eBay is not in foul trouble, if Connor Lammert's not in foul trouble, they can probably bother Kansas inside. I'm sure Isaiah Taylor will get a bunch more foul calls at home than he does on the road. So, and I just think in general, Kansas is probably going to, not throw the game away, but they're obviously not going to be approaching it with the intensity that they approached Saturday's game or last week's game at Baylor. And Texas kind of, they don't need a win to make the tournament or anything, but I mean, beating Kansas would sure help in terms of seeding. So I'm sure they're going to want to go after that. So yeah, I think Kansas will probably lose, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of going in the same direction. I saw that Kansas opened as a 2-point favorite. It looks like it's down to 1.5. So some early money at least coming in on Texas. I'm not a big believer in game-to-game, trends and motivation and things like that. But I mean, obviously, psychology still plays a role in sports, and I think when you go from a home game on Saturday, clinching the title, getting that pat on the back from everyone, actually getting a ring, getting a T-shirt, cutting down the net, and then 2 days later having to go play a team, that really is on a roll and whose coach doesn't seem to like you very much. I think it's a tough position for them to be in, to really come out and match the intensity that Texas is gonna come out with, and it's the one. Maybe Oklahoma sells out that arena, but other than that, Kansas is the one game where they actually have a really good environment on a regular basis. So I'm sure the crowd's going to get into it, and Texas will be excited. So, yeah, I would lean toward picking a loss at this point as well. But like you said, it doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, unless Kansas ends on a 3-game losing streak, I think loses to Kansas or to Texas, Kansas State, and then loses their first Big 12 tournament game, I don't think they're dropping off the one line, and that's really all they have to play for at this point. Andy, do we have you back now? Okay, I think we're still having some technical difficulties with Andy's feed, but Fetch, I'll direct this to you first, just because I know that you've made some remarks on your Twitter account about Shaka Smart. He said some things when he first got hired. Really called attention to his win over Kansas in the Elite Eight, in one of the more, I think, irritating losses that KU fans have had to endure in the tournament in recent years. He's gotten a lot of credit based mostly off of that one Final Four run. Obviously, VCU has been he's had a good program there for years, but he's never won a regular season conference title. He made the one Final Four run. Other than that, he's just been kind of a strong mid-major coach. Where do you put him right now in terms of coaches in the Big 12, and do you think he's being overrated at all?
I mean, I definitely think he's being overrated. He's probably, I don't know. I mean, after Self, Kruger, Huggins, probably Scott Drew, I think then you could kind of start to argue him at like 5th, maybe. Although, I don't know, Tubby has been really good lately. Who knows what Steve Prohm is going to do. I don't think I'm missing anyone. I don't really think Bruce Weber or Trent Johnson or Travis Ford is going to be up there. But so 5th, 6th, somewhere in there. But yeah, like you said, he's won the same number of regular conference titles as I have, and but for if Kansas would have shot. I looked it up to see exactly what they would have needed to shoot from 3 in that Elite Eight game to win, but it was like 11% or something like that. and they shot about 7% or whatever it was. So, but for like the weirdest 3-point shooting game in recent memory, they wouldn't have that Final Four either. And then, is he this in-demand coach? I don't know. Probably not. There's no doubt that coaches get more pumped up by what they do in March, and that leads things like Minnesota hiring Richard Pitino for some reason, or USC hiring Andy Enfield for some reason, although they've been pretty good this year. So that's maybe not the right year for that. But I don't know. I don't think he's fine. I don't think they're gonna be the dominant power in the Big 12. I don't think he'll ever like win a national title at Texas or anything, but I think he'll be fine. They haven't really done a lot of like havoc stuff this year, so maybe he's kind of leaving that behind. Although I think some of it has to do with just the makeup of their team, and he wants to wait to get some of his guys in and stuff. But even if they do a lot of that stuff, I mean, in some sense that press can probably work, but in others, I just think that if you go up against a team with a good solid point guard, it's going to tear you apart. And also, maybe this is just because of the way I like to watch basketball, but I don't really like defenses that kind of like dare you to call everything. West Virginia does it. Louisville kind of does it, or really does it, but not as much as they used to. And Havoc, isn't the same as those defenses, but they still have some elements of that. And I just think if either the refs are a little whistle happy, or you play against a good solid point guard, you're going to lose. And I mean, that's going to happen at some point in the tournament. So it just seems like it's going to be tough to really do a ton of that.
Yeah, and I also have to wonder if his personality hasn't helped him along as well, just because I think if he were a little more nondescript, then maybe the one Final Four, what was that, 5 years ago now, wouldn't have carried as much weight. But because he has a way of keeping his name out there just by being, I think he may have toned it down a little bit this year. I don't see him out on the court and yelling and kind of chattering with the other team's players the way I did when he was at VCU. But I think maybe his personalities had helped keep his name recognizable and helped keep his profile raised as well. Andrew, what are your thoughts on Smart at this point? What he's been able to do at Texas, and do you think that this is indicative of the direction the program's going to be heading in the coming years?
Yeah, he's a pretty decent coach, I think, but I don't know if he's a good enough coach for Texas. I think I could have gotten another Power 5 job someplace. But, I mean, Texas should be a top-tier program every year. With our school and the city of Austin and their facilities and stuff like that, there's just no reason for them to suck so much. I shouldn't say they suck, but I mean, you guys know what I mean here.
Right.
But for Shaka Smart as a coach, he's not bad. I mean, they're doing a lot better than what I thought they would be this year. I thought they'd be about middle of the pack, but they've been proven to be wrong so far. I don't know what exact standings right now, but yeah, he's doing better than what I thought, though. As for a long term at Texas, I'm not sure. I can see him being a pretty good recruiter and getting the guys in and all that. And I would think he's pretty young. He's pretty energetic too, and pretty excitable. I could see guys come on to go play for him. So I don't know. Who knows? They might be better off than what I might give him credit for. Maybe in 5 years, he'll turn out to be a great hire, or he might be unemployed. Who knows?
Yeah, I think you make a good point about his youth and his energy. It may have been a situation with Texas. I know a lot of places in a lot of different sports when you see one coach get fired or put to pasture, whatever you want to call what Texas did with Rick Barnes. Yeah, a lot of the times you see them go in the exact opposite direction. We've seen it with KU football. They get rid of the the angry guy in Mangino and bring in more of a choir boy in Turner Gill, and when he doesn't work out, they go back to more of a grumpy model with Charlie Weiss, and now we've got the younger ultra positive David Beatty, and I think maybe that might have fed into why he landed at Texas specifically, is that they wanted maybe the anti-Rick Barnes, which I think Shaka Smart definitely is. So it remains to be seen, whether that'll help him in recruiting. Obviously, Texas is an easier place to recruit to than VCU. I don't know that he had any outstanding players at VCU, but he was certainly able to get good enough players that combined with his system, they were able to see consistent success in the mid-majors. I've been looking through VCU's profiles on Ken Pomeroy's site, and something that's interesting to me, and Fetch, you had noted that they're not necessarily playing that havoc style right now. Their defensive average possession length has usually been between about 17 and a half and 18 seconds, which in recent years has been close to middle of the pack. This year, their defensive average possession length is 18 seconds, which, because of the rule changes and the additional fouls, that actually puts them way down at 306th in the country. So they're allowing teams to have the ball actually for much longer than the average team does. So yeah, that's really speaks to, I think, the extent to which he's had to abandon that havoc style of play and go to something completely different. But again, right now it's working for them. We can't predict the future, so it'll just have to be kind of a wait and see thing if he can finally win his first conference title in the Big 12, and if Texas will end up being the right fit for him.
Yeah, I think two things that I'm going to look for him going forward real quick is, one, to see if they become a bit of a one and done factory, because this isn't really the case, but the perception is just that they will go play AAU ball for a year and then can go to the NBA. So that might be a little bit more preferable than going to a place where you're going to have to learn half-court defensive rotations and stuff like that, and maybe they'll start getting more recruits that way. I think that's a little unfair, but I think that's how 18-year-old kids think too. So you never know. And then the other thing is the big thing with his teams at VCU were basically if you could beat the press, you could score. They were way down there in terms of points per possession allowed, like in half-court possessions and stuff like that. And obviously, if you can't get that fixed at Texas, it's not going to really matter how well they press. But they're going to have some better athletes and stuff. So if they can fix that a little bit, then maybe they'll have something. But I just think it's way too early to make any call either way on what's going to happen with them.
And real quick, we'll try and get another episode in before the Iowa State game. But just in case, do either of you think that there's any chance? It sounds like we're all pretty negative heading into Monday. That they have to play. It's a home game, but they have to play an Iowa State team that's record hasn't been great this year, but has I think as of last time I looked, the Ken Palm's top offense in the country. Do either of you think there's any chance that KU could lose out in these last two games after winning 9 in a row? Danger, I'll start with you.
No, I don't think so. I think we lose tomorrow, and then we win on a Saturday. There's no way we're going to lose on Perialsis. It's a senior night at home. Come on, man. That's not happening.
All right. And Fetch, do you think there's any shot they lose at home with likely everything wrapped up at that point?
I would be pretty surprised. I mean, a couple things, I think Iowa State matches up pretty well with Kansas. Um, just because Niang is hard to guard, and for whatever reason, Kansas hasn't really punished his bad defense and hasn't really punished Monty Morris's bad defense. And um, Iowa State is actually fourth, I think. Yeah, they're fourth right now in conference efficiency, which I think would probably surprise some people. Um, but at the same time, Kansas probably should have won that game in Ames, but for Frank Mason going 1-on-4 50 times in a row on offense, which I still don't get. So, when you couple that to the fact that it is Perry Ellis' senior day and Kansas doesn't really lose at home pretty much no matter what, I think Kansas will probably take it. I'm not super worried, and I'm also not really one of these people who cares too much about like the home court winning streak. So like if they do lose, I'm not gonna throw a fit or anything like that, but I think they'll win.
All right, and you mentioned Frank Mason. It wasn't a topic that I'd prepared to discuss, but I think it's probably one worth mentioning. The Iowa State game was right in that period of time where he was really forcing things, and no one else seemed willing or able to really step up on offense, and that was when the offense really started to sputter, and that was in that stretch where they lost 3 of 5, and I think pretty much everyone, or at least the more negative of us, thought that the streak was over at that point. He's really turned it around and become that same player we were seeing at the beginning of the year and that we saw last year, who was really the engine of the team. You always have to take everything that the coaches say with a grain of salt. I was listening to the pregame on Saturday, and Jarrett Howard said that in order to get him to turn it around, they had to tell him to start looking for his own shot more and stop looking to just feed his teammates as much. And I kind of did a double take after he said that. I don't know where I'm sure that the coaching staff didn't think that Frank Mason being too unselfish was the problem there, but whatever was the problem, whatever the issue was, I can't help but feel like if we see it start to return as the tournament approaches, that could that probably more than anything scares me in terms of Kansas tanking early in the tournament again, as if whatever was going on with Frank Mason at that point comes back, because I think he's really been probably the biggest or about as big a part of the recent resurgence in the last few weeks. So I guess I'm kind of rambling here, but Andrew, I'll go to you first. What do you see that Frank Mason's been doing differently here recently, and do you have any concerns that he could revert to that prior form as we head into the tournament?
I'm not sure how different he's been. It just seems like it's working now. He's getting foul calls. He's making his shots. Making good passes. I guess more in his slump. He tried all those same things, but they didn't work out. And now, for whatever reason, it's finally working. I have no explanation there. I don't know. But if it's working now, I think it's been working a month too. So I think we're in good shape here.
Fetch, any thoughts on Mason's recent play and what he might look like going forward?
Well, I think he's passing the ball better, which is nice. I mean, Kansas has plenty of shooters to kick the ball out to. And I think, this is more anecdotal than anything, but I think he's done a better job of, pulling up and taking a jumper, shooting a floater, rather than going into, guys who are a foot taller than he is, which usually isn't a very good idea. So, those are two big things. He's turned it over a lot less too, which helps. So, I think he's the most important guy in the team still. Their skid this year pretty much coincided with him playing like crap. And then once he started playing better, the team started looking a lot better. You know, last year he was clearly, I don't know, gassed or not right health wise or something in that second round game against Wichita State, and I think that that's a big reason. I mean, obviously Perry Ellis having one good leg, you know, if he has two good legs, Kansas probably wins that game. But I also think if Mason was 100%, Kansas probably wins that game too. So if he's going well and he's playing right, I think Kansas can go a long way. But yeah, I definitely worry about him getting like Sharon Collins syndrome and thinking he needs to go win the thing by himself. So um, hopefully he doesn't do that, but I'm not necessarily ruling it out either.
Yeah, and to go back to something that Andrew, you said that actually was a really good point was yeah, I think you had said that you're not sure how differently he's really been playing, and I think there might be something to that in that, you know, in the Texas Tech game and in you know a few of the other recent games. You know, he's driven into the lane, into traffic the way he was before, but he's finished with a circus layup that went in, or he's gotten a foul call and he's gone to the free throw line to get a couple of shots. And you know that wasn't happening when he was in that slump. He's been knocking down, you know, open looks from 3-point range, and that wasn't happening. So it could be that he's not playing all that differently as much as it is that he's just making shots, because you know, Bill Self says this a lot. You know, sometimes making shots can kind of overshadow everything else, and so I mean he's still taking the ball to the rim frequently, and you know, it doesn't necessarily matter who's in his way, but it seems like right now he's finishing those shots or drawing a foul call, whereas he wasn't for a while. So it really could be a situation where maybe it's maybe we're seeing the scoring numbers go up, the shooting numbers go up, and the positive outcomes go up, and so we feel like he's playing differently. Whereas you know, the truth may be just that the ball's going through the basket right now.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know.
But yeah, we kind of got off topic a little there. But I do think that'll be something to keep an eye on, is how Frank Mason plays as we get into March here. But with the regular season pretty much patched up, I know Fetch and I had touched on this a little bit in last week's show, but just to bring it up again, do we care at all what happens in the Big 12 tournament? Obviously, you don't. It's not that you don't care at all if your team loses, but in this case, you know, unless they were to drop both their last two remaining games, I don't think there's anything they can do in the tournament that's going to move them from the one seed line. You know, it could cost them maybe the overall one seed if they're in contention for that, but I know I personally don't care if they're the top one seed or the last one seed. I don't think they even do the snake seeding anymore, so it doesn't really matter as long as they go to the right, they get put in the right pod and that's close to home, and they get the best seed possible. So, Fetch, even though we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, has anything changed? Do you care at all how this team does in the conference tournament?
No. And I don't even really care if they're a 1 or a 2 ever. Just as a fan, I'd kind of like them to be a 2, just in case they would lose their first game. I don't want it on forever that they were the first one to lose to a 16. And also, you know, my other alma mater, the University of North Dakota, has a not insignificant chance of winning the Big Sky tournament, and they would probably be a 16 seed. So I'd rather not see them matched up against each other, I guess. But no, I don't really care how they do in the Big 12 tournament. They're probably going to win their first game against K-State or whomever it is. And then, you know, their semifinal game is probably going to be, I don't know, Baylor or Texas, which, you know, will probably be a tough game. And then championship game, if they make it there against West Virginia and Oklahoma, I mean, that's a tough run to do 3 games, 3 days. And I'd rather just see him get some days off and rest and stuff, but I don't know. I would like to cede my time and note that throw a little curveball here that the Oscars are on tonight, so I looked up the Best Picture nominees from the last year that Kansas didn't win the Big 12. Million Dollar Baby won Best Picture. That's a very old movie.
I've still to this day not seen that. Is that the boxing one? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have not seen it either, but yeah, it's the one with was that Meg Ryan, right? No, Hillary Swank. What was the one with Meg Ryan? Wasn't there a boxing movie with Meg Ryan?
I can't picture Meg Ryan
You've
as a
got mail.
boxer. You've got. I
I
don't
don't
remember
know.
the boxing scene from that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been meaning. I never got around to it. I've been meaning to look up, what was going on in the world the last time a Big 12 season ended, and Kansas was not the conference champion or didn't have at least a share of it. I know we were still in the first George W. Bush presidency, so we've had three presidential elections since the last time, and
My favorite one is that YouTube was invented like 2 months after the streak started or something like that, or 2 months before the streak started or something like that. So YouTube and the streak are about the same age.
yeah, that's insane. YouTube has been around as long as KU's conference title streak has been.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the last thing I wanted to touch on is just the strength of the Big 12 this year. I know in some years, it's kind of been doubted as KU's gone through the streak. I don't think anyone nationally really doubts how strong the conference is this year. I think everyone agrees that they're going to get 7 teams in. I don't think Texas Tech has anything to worry about at this point. So with that said, I mean they didn't have a bad year last year, but the tournament was sort of a disaster with Iowa State and Baylor both going down to much lower seeds on that first day. I believe Oklahoma State and I don't remember, how did Oklahoma do in their did Oklahoma lose in the first round last year too?
16, they lost to Michigan State.
Okay, yeah. So they did okay, but obviously Kansas didn't make it out of the first weekend. Obviously, so much is dependent on matchups when you get into the tournament. But just looking at how teams are doing right now, how they're built, how they're constructed, who do you think is best equipped to go on a run other than maybe the teams at the top? Is there anyone other than maybe Kansas and Oklahoma that you think could go on a run? And do you think that the Big 12 will probably have a showing this year than they did last year? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think KU, West Virginia, and Oklahoma all have a pretty good chance to go pretty deep in the tournament. As for the next tier down teams, hard to say. I mean, the tournament is a kind of a crapshoot. You really can't say what's going to happen. I mean, like, took it last year. I had Iowa State in my Final Four, and shit, the first game they go down. So you really can't to predict these things at all. I don't know.
Fetch, does anyone stand out to you? Again, outside of the top couple of teams, is someone who could make a run this year?
Yeah. Not really. I mean, it depends on what you think by run. I don't really believe Texas Tech is going to do anything. That's kind of one team that I'm not too bullish on. But I think, Iowa State, Texas, Baylor, West Virginia, and Oklahoma, in Kansas, obviously, could all make the second weekend. And kind of those, Kansas, Oklahoma, and even West Virginia could make like a Final Four run. But it also wouldn't really surprise me if all those teams lost early. But that's not just because like a Big 12 thing. That's just because it's not going to surprise me if anyone loses early this year. So I'm really high on West Virginia. I think that they're going to be, and again, it's going to depend on, they need kind of the refs to swallow the whistle a little bit, and I can't remember how it was called last year, if they called a ton of fouls or didn't, but it seems to me that they didn't really call a lot of grabbing and stuff, which is going to help West Virginia big time, and I think if they get something like that, they could go on a Final Four run. So they're kind of my team to click.
Yeah, I agree on West Virginia, and I think the style that they play, again, like you said, as long as the refs aren't blowing the whistle a lot, will help them in the tournament just because it's something you don't see every day, and if you get them in your second game of the weekend, then you've only got a couple days to prepare for a style of play that maybe you've only seen once or twice that season. So I think that gives them an advantage. And Bob Huggins, I think, is like the third or fifth winningest active coach in college basketball. I mean, obviously he knows what he's doing at this point. So I think they're a team that could give teams a lot of trouble just because you're not used to having to play that style. And I think in the tournament, I don't have any data to support this, but I think refs do tend to back out of the limelight a little bit and let the game be played, and that's certainly going to work to West Virginia's advantage. I also think that Iowa State is an interesting case to me because I'm looking at it right now. According to Ken Pomeroy, he's got them with the top-rated offense in the 11th rated offense in the I'm sorry, I'm looking at 2015 there. Yeah, he does have them as the top-rated offense in the country, but the 130th rated defense. And we've seen some teams, maybe not with that much disparity between the offense and the defense, but some really offense-heavy teams go on some runs. There have been some Duke teams that really did not play much defense, but could score at an incredibly consistent rate, make deep tournament runs. And so I think they're a team to keep an eye on. I think because of that defense and because of their reliance on jump shots, that they could be a prime candidate for an early out. But I also think with the right matchups and as long as they're they don't run into any nights where they're shooting 3 of 20 from 3-point range, I think they could be a team that could really make a run. But Fetch, like you said, I mean, so much of it's matchup dependent and so much of it can just be chalked up to stuff happens that any team could really go out early, and a lot of teams could get things clicking and go on a nice run. So just for the sake of the conference, I hope that I'm not really a big root for your conference guy. If I don't like a team, I just don't root for them. But for the sake of the Big 12 and just the overall narrative on the conference, I would like to see some better performances this year.
Yeah, I think just briefly, I would echo your sentiments about Iowa State. I mean, they got a veteran point guard. They got a go-to scorer. I don't think the depth thing is going to be a huge issue unless it becomes an issue due to foul trouble. But I actually took a little look at this a couple of years ago and found that if you're going to be heavy on one, you'd want to be heavy on offense, with the theory being that, during the regular season, teams will go, lengths of time just kind of saying, well, whatever on defense and not really giving a crap, whereas you're obviously going to try and score every time down the floor because everyone wants to score. But in the tournament, you're going to give kind of max effort every possession defensively, so your defensive efficiency is going to decrease just kind of as a natural response to having to try hard every possession. And I think, I've seen that kind of backed up a little bit with like Notre Dame last year was a really good offensive team and sucked on defense, and they almost made the Final Four. And, like you said with Duke, this is, last year's team wasn't any good at defense and they won the whole thing. So definitely, you'd want to be both, but if you could only pick one, I think you'd want to be good on offense. I think Iowa State can surprise some people as well.
Right. Well, we'll see where we're getting dangerously close to that time of year when I start pulling my hair out over every KU game and putting way too much emphasis on everything they do. But that's about all the time we have for tonight. So I'd like to thank you both for joining, and Andy as well. He did send me an email saying that he was having technical difficulties. He had to drop out there, but we'll continue trying to get him on. He was actually supposed to be on last week as well, but trying to get the computer situation sorted out there. But Fetch, thanks for taking time out of your evening, and Andrew, thanks for taking time on your birthday to join us tonight to talk a little KU hoops. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, again, thanks for being on, and to all the viewers out there, thanks for watching. Keep watching. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, and we'll continue to try and provide as much good content for you as possible. It's been a great weekend, wrapping up a 12th straight Big 12 title, and hopefully we'll have more good things to come here in the next month or so. So thanks to everyone for watching.